Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to be having a go at a pencil drawing, and I'm going to be reviewing these matte graphite pencils. And we're going to be doing this lovely little French scene. But if you prefer to work in colour, there's also a watercolour version at the end. So, come and join me and we'll have a little sketch together. Now, before we start, I've had a few people ask me to have a look through my sketchbooks. Now, I appreciate that might not be of interest to everyone, so I've left it till the end of the video. So we have a little product review today, and I must point out that I'm not sponsored. I bought these all with my own pocket money, and these are the 6 pencil set of matte graphite pencils by Faber-Castell. Now, I don't think these are a particularly new product, but they're certainly new to me, and I'm excited to try them. Now, they're all very soft leads, ranging from 2B, 4B, 6B, 8B, 10B and 12B. But the beauty of them is that they are matte and very dark, which means that you won't get that annoying sheen that you get from a standard graphite pencil. And you can see on that big fence post on the left, I've tried a few marks with these pencils how much darker the value is. So these should be fun. For today's tutorial, here's the beautiful reference photo which I got from Pixabay, many thanks to Tamas66. So only a few things that I'm going to alter. I think I'll take out those bins and perhaps that sign. And I always think it's good to have a mono version. It just really helps you see where those darks and lights are. Right, so how do we start our drawing? Now, some artists will use the grid method by dividing up the image into small squares. Now, I'm not a big fan. I think it inhibits any form of freedom and any artistic nuance, and your drawing can be in danger of looking a little stiff. Now, having said that, I will sometimes divide my reference into quarters with a vertical and horizontal line, then do the same on my paper, which is a sheet of what we call here in the UK cartridge paper, but any decent drawing paper will do. So, from my matte pencil set, I'm starting with a fairly light 2B. And I'm starting by holding my pencil right at the end so I can get lots of nice, loose, quick movement. And all I'm doing is lightly plotting location points as to where the main features start and finish. Now, they're very light and I just hope that you can see them. At this stage, I really don't want to commit to any final drawing lines. I'm simply feeling my way into the composition, happy to make adjustments and just looking for those big shapes. And you certainly wouldn't get those lovely sweeping lines if you were holding your pencil right at the point. Now, I'm certainly not getting the proportions exactly the same as the photo reference, but does it matter? No one's going to be looking at the photo when they look at your drawing. Now, I'm often asked if it's okay to trace. Of course, I do it all the time, especially when I'm in a hurry, but it's always good practice to train your eye to draw things as you see them. Now, you'll notice that I'm not staying in one area for too long. I'm always considering the picture as a whole, rather than individual elements. I call it drawing across the image, constantly building the drawing up in its entirety. There's no point in, say, drawing one of those bushes and spending 10 minutes on it, only to find it's in the wrong place and you've got to rub it out and start again. So, with a little bit of investigation, I found out exactly where the shop is. It's in a place called, and I'm not going to try and pronounce it, which is fairly central France near Dijon, and it's a little sweet shop, as we would say, un bien bonbon. And from Google Street View, I found this alternative view. Now, I'm not going to put in those figures there, but I think I will add in that little sign instead of the bins. So once I've got the basic shape of this little van, I'm not going to finish it. I'm going to move on and then start to build up other areas. So up to now, the line weight has all been pretty even because I've been applying roughly the same pressure on my pencil. But as I begin to build up the drawing, I'm starting to put more pressure on the pencil, trying to get those darker values. And I've also switched from my 2B pencil to the slightly darker 4B. And for these dark values in the window, I really am putting on a lot of pressure onto my pencil. Now here on the road, I'm using my pencil very much on its side, skimming across the top of the paper, and the slight tooth in the cartridge paper is also helping to give this nice texture. Bonjour madame, 2 kilos de chocolat éclair s'il vous plaît.
Bien sûr, monsieur. Et voilà.
And here I'm using the value of the darker bush to give me the contrast and shape of the lighter bush below. Now, one thing I do find about these pencils is that the point does tend to blunt very quickly. A quick sharpen. Oh, that's nice. Nothing like a nice sharp point. And again, it's the dark value of the trees behind which helps to bring out the shape of those two signs. Now, I find by working this way, by jumping around the paper, a much more interesting and exciting way to draw. For example, if I was to spend the next 20 minutes finishing off this tree, I would find it would get a little monotonous. There's also the danger of your drawing not having a consistency across the sheet, and it could easily look like the artwork was completed in sections. Because clearly you may be in a slightly different mindset when you start. Things may be a little tighter as you're a little fresher. Then later you may have had, a couple of excellent glasses of Sauvignon Blanc and your pencil work is a little looser. That's why I find moving around the sheet of paper should give you a more cohesive and consistent feel to your drawing. And this is very much the same approach I take with my watercolour paintings. Now, I know not every artist works this way. There's no right or wrong way of doing anything in art, but for me, it's always been the approach I prefer. Okay, now for the beast of them all. This is the 12B. Let's see how nice and dark we can get some of these windows. And I'm loving the matte feel that I'm getting from these pencils. There's not a hint of sheen off the studio lights. And this is always a nice touch to put in windows where you get the reflection from the trees into the glass of the window. Now, I know many of you who watch my channel use the free drawing templates I supply on my website, and I wouldn't want to discourage their use at all. Now, you can still learn plenty from using them, but if you want to progress as an artist, it's always good to try and develop your own drawings. Just spending 10 or 15 minutes each day drawing things from life, just simple things around the house, will definitely improve your visual skills and train your artistic eye. Now, I'm often asked the simple question, how can I become a better artist? And the answer from me is always the same. Draw, and then a bit more drawing. It really will help you with the basic principles of art. Tonal values, perspective, scale, composition, and most important of all, confidence. Now, I like to use the example of Picasso. Now, during the latter part of his career, he created art which had no representational element to them in any way, nothing that resembled real life. But, by God, he knew how to draw. So, it's good to remember, before you break the rules, you need to learn the rules. So, my plan is, when I get time, is to start a separate drawing channel. So, please let me know in the comments below if this is something that you'd be interested in. Here I'm using fairly simple diagonal hatching lines to fill in these dark spaces. Again, contrasts are always really important, so I'm getting a very dark value here in the tree to give the shape of the van below. Oh, blunt pencil again, another sharpen needed. So just be aware there's a slight bit of perspective going on here. The lines are slightly going downhill from left to right, then they straighten up in the middle on the eye line, and then they go slightly uphill towards the bottom. So in these doors and windows, I don't want a solid black. I want to suggest there's something going on inside, but they're still fairly dark values. So here I'm just quickly skimming my pencil across the top of the paper to give the illusion of these little stones and gritty bits. So with these bushes, I'm trying to consider how the plant would actually grow. So I'm sketching in these short dabby strokes in sort of a fan shape to reflect the dome shape of the bush. So nice dark values in this corner, as most of this side is in shadow. And with this spiky plant, I'm sketching in the main pointy shape, then a little bit of negative drawing by putting in the shadows behind. Next, and probably the hardest part of the drawing, is putting in the name of Le Petit Magasin. Now, lightly suggesting it at first, then once I'm happy, in with the dark. And for the smaller text, I'm just blagging it with a few squiggles. There we go, c'est fini. But wait. Now, I often like to tint my finished drawings with a very light wash of watercolour. So, would it work with these pencils? Yep, the watercolour wash is laid perfectly on top, and remembering this isn't even watercolour paper. So, my final thoughts on these pencils: loved them. Just love that dark matte feel to them, and I'll probably use them now as my default pencil. The only thing is, because of the soft leads, you will get through them fairly quickly. That's how much I've used just in this drawing, but definitely worth it. Right, as promised, a quick flick through a couple of my sketchbooks. Now this first one is so old, the price on the back is in florins, so it's back from the days when I used to run a local art school. So this first one is a quick sketch from a plein air day that we had at Herstmonceux Castle grounds, and this is a sketch for a painting which I don't think I ever completed, I think somewhere in France. These are just some pencil sketches. Another plein air sketch on holiday. Working out a layout for some boats, a local scene. Just more scribbles. Yeah, here's the finished work of those boats. A little bit of watercolour wash. More experiments. Yes, now this was a finished work. It was a Helen Ellingham project, also showing ways of drawing trees. A couple of unfinished drawings, and some mad chickens in watercolour. A couple of sketches for potential projects. Some of you may recognise the blue door there. That was a lesson in tonal values and shadows. Demonstrations when I was teaching. Yes, that was a singer-sergeant exercise, learning from the great masters. Proportions for heads and faces. A line and wash pepper demonstration and a couple of Spitfire demos. Oh yes, you saw that one earlier. That was a finished exercise in class. More perspective demonstrations, working out angles, and unfinished boat, local scene, more unfinished drawings. A layout for a potential painting. Yes, I remember how to create the illusion of shiny copper. Another little florals. Some figure work, never my strongest point, but I do try and work on it. Another plein air sketch that was up the road at Herstmonceux Castle. A few little doodles and experiments. Some fishing boats, and there was a step-by-step done in class. This one here was working out your vanishing point to get your perspectives right. A few florals, and oh dear, do I find hands hard to do. Another little sketch from class, I believe. Next, my little Hahnemuhle sketchbook, and this one is much more recent. There we have a little simple line and wash experiment. Some sketches of trees, again line and wash. A lot of these will be in plein air. That's just a bit of fun. That one I do remember being on my bike to paint. Oh, poor little Molly, sadly no longer with us, asleep on a chair. That was for a potential painting, which I never got around to doing. Just things out and about around the house, in the garden. Some Rembrandt paints for some reason. Another local little scene, line and wash. That's a watercolour sketch in Dartmoor, plein air. That was at Alhambra in southern Spain. I remember doing that in the heat, and that's Salat, France. A couple of local watercolours, local Sussex Lane. Along the South Downs here, pen and wash. That was experimenting with granulating paints and a potential tutorial. Just some mad doodles, just having a bit of fun with line and wash and with ink and pencil, just practicing really. A couple of bridges, a watercolour and a line drawing. And that's the pub up the road. I remember sitting in the beer garden sketching that. Another shiny brass vase, some swatching. These are a couple of sketches that I used in YouTube tutorials. The bottom one done plein air. No idea what was going through my mind there, just a bit of fun. That was working out the perspective when you have a reflection in the water. Pub up the road again. Seemed to go to that pub a bit actually. That, not so good. Now this one here is painted plein air in Alhambra, and I used that for a project for Leisure Painter magazine. A boat, and some of you may recognise that, a sketch for a tutorial that I did here on YouTube. More perspectives, more reflections, just really experimenting. And yes, now I do remember that one. Spent a very enjoyable afternoon in the woods painting that one. Simple shapes for people. I do believe you can never practice those enough. That was a couple of demos for students when we went to Scotney Castle. More ideas for YouTube tutorials. Bit of fun there, splatting around with white paint. Ah yes, getting in the scheme of things for some Japanese art when I reviewed the Kuretake paints. Pencil sketch. More Japanese stuff. Splashing around with colours with some florals. More sketches. Oh yeah, that wild rose was fairly recent for a YouTube tutorial. Some plein air sketches, local farmhouses. I do love doing buildings, especially little cottages and things. Some in line, some just with washes on them. And that's about it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Remember, you can never practice your drawings enough. That old saying, you can't make a good painting from a bad drawing, is perfectly true. And in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, it is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one. I can't always reply to them all. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Cheers everyone.